Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming through to my presentation today. I would have done it in French, but I didn't have enough time to prepare that. So hopefully we can. Hopefully English will be all right for everybody. I will do my best to answer any questions, French or English, as we go. And honestly, I do not mind at all if anybody wants to raise a hand and ask a question as we're going, or you can save it to the end. It's really up to you. So yeah, I'm going to turn off my notifications here. Definitely don't want to be doing that right now. Okay, very good. So my name is Colin Mayhew. I work at SureWeb. SureWeb is a Microsoft indirect provider. That is a fancy way of kind of saying we're a very large Microsoft reseller. We work with ITI as their indirect provider. So we are kind of operating in the background, behind the scenes for their Microsoft business as a reseller. So we try to stay on top of everything, and I try to translate these Microsoft concepts into ideas that are maybe a little easier for actual business people to understand. So my goal today is to sort of translate some of this Microsoft marketing language into, in this case, English and maybe some French as we answer questions. Basically, a lot of this can seem very remote and difficult to understand, difficult to put it into everyday real terms because of all the buzzwords and acronyms. So today I want to make it a little bit more down to earth. So my whole chat with you today is about BI and analytics. Now, one of the big things you're going to see in the next few years, it's going to be, well, now and in the next few years, it's going to be impossible to get away from. As IT professionals or as business professionals, even more so as we go, you are going to be asked constantly, you're going to constantly have conversations about AI. It's almost like BI and analytics are kind of, it's out of style now. Because I put it this way, like, I still need an enterprise data strategy. I thought ChatGPT would come along, and who needs BI anymore? You can just type your questions into the machine and it'll tell you everything you need to know, right? And I think those dreams are very exciting, but the thing to remember is that data and BI are still here as that foundation for those kind of next level applications that you want to make. And I think this idea here of unifying your data platform for analytics and AI, it sounds very cerebral. I kind of want to break it down into some easy to understand chunks, steps that you can take. This doesn't actually necessarily need to be an all-in-one bite kind of endeavor. So I kind of wanted to throw this out to you, just maybe show of hands. How many of you have had conversations internally about generative AI and how you want to use it in your organizations? Has that happened internally? Yes, of course. Very hot topic. I was kind of thinking I would see a lot of hands. And is anybody who is hearing from maybe executives in your company? They're like, hey, we need a strategy to leverage AI. What's our AI strategy advantage going to be? Has that conversation happened, or has it been more like, how are we going to use existing functionality? It can kind of go both ways. So I have a little skepticism. I kind of have a little skepticism on this figure here, the 68%, because I don't think 68% of leaders are thinking this way. Because how many leaders in a business are really like, well, gee, our AI and our data platform for analytics, they're mostly thinking about how are we going to make more money? How are we going to introduce product lines that are going to generate new market penetration for us. They're really not thinking about analytics and AI in and of themselves. They really should be thinking about how you're growing the business. So that's kind of the mind shift the mindset shift that I want to help you guys start to have today. So now this one, I find this stat a lot more believable. I'm pulling a lot of these from Microsoft. These are stats they're putting out there. This one I totally believe. There's a ton of hype about AI right now. But the thing to remember is, amongst your fever dreams, you have to remember your company didn't invent ChatGPT and keep it secret. Everybody has access to it, right? Like these large language models are not secret things that you only have access to. So using generative AI by itself is not going to give you a competitive advantage. It's just another thing for you to play with that everybody has, right? It's not a competitive advantage by itself. So you have to think less about the technology because that's going to be available to everybody. Microsoft and OpenAI and all their competitors want to sell it to as many people as possible. So that is a common thing that everyone's going to be able to have. Your competitive edge is going to be a lot more about how you use it and how you can apply it to your actual competition in the market. The other difference and thing that's unique to you is your data. What can you actually capture? And how can then you turn that around into something that is useful to you? So that's what I want you to think about in terms of competitive advantage. AI doesn't really do it. It's more what you do with AI. So here's my example. Everybody's got to have a little bit of a laugh in their slides. I hope this one makes you laugh as much as it did me. This was a really famous story where people would ask ChatGPT how to make pizza, and ChatGPT would suggest that you put glue on it. That would really help the cheese stay on there. And it's because people on Reddit were making jokes about this, right? Like, hey, dummy, why don't you just put glue on your pizza? It was sarcastic. So ChatGPT famously took it seriously and put it out there. So this is a super over-the-top, fun example of what happens when you run a large language model on a data set that is not up to snuff. It's the old classic adage, garbage in, garbage out. So this is weird and funny in its own way, but the thing that makes me very nervous about this is that most examples of really bad data will not be this obvious. A lot of them will be kind of subtle, and you will be led in the wrong direction without something as crazy stupid as putting glue on your pizza. It will give you bad intel. If you pump slightly bad, it can go very bad. If you put slightly bad info into it, it can take you a really in a wrong direction. So that's kind of the sobering thing about this. That's why it's important not to rush into AI. You really have to start with the foundations, and that's what we're going to talk. That's what I really want to spend time on today. So this is another slide I stole from Microsoft because I kind of like the way they shape this, where if you want to lead with AI, you need the foundation. And so they're really focused on unify your data estate, prepare your data for how you're going to use it, and then empower everybody. Push that out to everybody to use. Now, and then of course, the major foundation on the bottom is about security and governance. We're going to go back to that at some point, but this is kind of the futuristic Microsoft message. But there's actually a bunch that really needs to go into the way you're going to be treating your data before you can even go into this kind of advanced state. So let's get a little bit ahead here. I've got 20 minutes. So the advice I want to give you as a kind of an internal in your company as a way to sort of get the ball rolling on this, right, is take advantage of this hype. People at your company are going to be excited about the idea of competitive advantage. So go with it. But I also highly recommend that the big AI dreams will help you get started on this journey, but you can't overpromise, right? I think the thing to do is take this excitement and use it as an opportunity to invest in the fundamentals of how data works in your organization and how it can be more useful over time as you put time and energy into it. And AI is a place you want to get to, and you're not even that far away from it, but you really need to focus on the business use cases, just not what's cool. It needs to keep coming back to what makes your business go. So this is the way, again, I'm going back to how Microsoft puts it, and then I kind of want to translate it into something a little bit more pragmatic. This is sort of their sales pitch, right? Microsoft is always product first. They're going to have a product and they're going to tell you all about their product, but they're not really going to tell you about how it matters to your business. So what I want to do is I want to take these ideas and I'm going to translate it for you into some of that. So this is where I kind of want us to this is where I want us to get to. So here's another fun stat. 91% of companies agree that democratizing access to data and analytics is important to the success of their organizations. That seems high to me, but I agree. I think it's really, really important to do. But only 21% of employees in various functions are confident in their data literacy skills. Now, I am way more confident in the average employee's data literacy skills, or at least their potential. Because, trust me, I did not do that well in high school math. I am not a math whiz. This stuff, I love analytics. I'm a super user of Power BI at SureWeb, and I'm constantly annoying the BI team with requests. This is something that anybody can get kind of into, and it's addictive. Once you start using data and start making it part of your practice in any function in your company, you're really going to not want to go without it anymore. So I agree with the first one, and I think the 79% of employees they just need a little bit of help. We need to help them we need to make it a little bit easier for them. So one thing I want you to start thinking about just right now in your organization, are your data sources just silos? Are they sitting alone? Is the data for a singular function, like say sales? Is it connected with data from other departments? Chances are it may not be, right? Your CRM data, for instance, may be maintained by your CRM admin or somebody in IT is kind of tasked with that or what have you. Or maybe it's even with your CRM partner if you have a consulting partner who manages that. So these data might be alone by themselves, and that doesn't mean that they're useless. It just means that they're limited. So, are you able to pull static reports? Sometimes you can't even do that. Some people are really, really stuck and have a really hard time pulling data out of their systems. Some very large companies that you would be very surprised to hear are still using green screen applications and very, very old-fashioned kind of approaches. So you should start with your siloed data sources, but just be aware that your insights are going to be limited because you're limited to a single function. And chances are, if you're trying to unite data, I'm guessing it's probably happening in Excel, and it may not be governed by the best IT security and governance principles, right? If you've got just a workbook full of data, you need to you need to be concerned about who's able to access it and whether it's secure. That kind of thing doesn't scale, but it's very often where folks are starting. And this, if this is your situation, it does not mean that you are screwed. It just means that you're starting. So maybe you've got some nice embedded reports in some of these data sources. These are not useless either, but they're very limited, right? Like if I look here, even like, oh, average years of tenure, that's an interesting metric. I don't really know what I'm doing with it, per se. You know what I mean? It's not telling me the answer to a question that I need, but it's something, it's interesting. Average age, 38, okay, it's not nothing. How many people have we terminated? Okay, that sounds high. You know what I mean? You can start pulling headcount numbers. You can get some basic information, but without being able to tie it back to other parts of the business, it's just like, okay, well, keep an eye on it, I guess. You don't really know why it's important necessarily. You may have some intuitions, and it's still better than not knowing anything. But, this is not the same as, advanced reporting and analytics where you can actually answer business questions. These are just basic metrics. So this is another kind of Microsoft slide that I think is really useful way of thinking about it. If you just try to jump from those siloed data sources to your generative AI use cases, you're going to end up with a lot of tech debt, and you're going to have a hard time. You're just going to have a hard time getting use out of your data, and the thing you need to do is build that data foundation and build competency in your organization. I think that's going to make a big difference for a lot of you. So I wanted to put that out there as something to think about before we move on. So let me just see here. I want to make sure that I'm not lost. Okay. So I want you to think about now, maybe you have that siloed data sources situation. Maybe you're a little past that. Maybe you're way past that. And but I'm gonna go back a little bit. Don't wait for things to be perfect, okay? Just do start now with what you have. And let me talk a little bit about that. So start thinking in questions. Remember the slide we saw before with some of those basic HR metrics? Those were all metrics that nobody's really asking for, right? Like, is anybody in your organization emailing you to be like, geez, Louise, what is the average age of the employees in our company? You know what I mean? Like, who cares? Why would that be interesting? But if you start thinking about things that you don't know that you might like to know, well, what is the cost of employee turnover? Because you can go into that. You can certainly go in and say, okay, let's break it down by month. How many people are we losing? Are we tracking the different types of turnover? Chances are, you know whether it's a regrettable turnover or whether it's, say a firing or a restructuring or that kind of thing. So let's look at the different types of turnover and let's start to estimate what that might cost by looking at some of our other business data. Now, this is a hard one. I'm not pretending this is a super easy one to answer, but I want you to think about aiming high, right? Even if you can't get the answer, you should at least these are things you should want to know, right? And stuff like what are our most profitable customers likely to buy next? This is accessible if you're combining a few data sources, right? And you can go on and on and on. This is just from my limited imagination, right? The one thing that I like to think about it this way: if you think about the question, how many seagulls are in flight at this second on planet Earth? It's impossible to know, and it's pretty useless. I don't think there's anybody in the world who really cares about that one. So we can put that one aside. The question, are there seagulls on the island of Montreal? It's really easy to know. I would say it's almost certainly yes, but it's also pretty useless, right? Like, why do I need to know that? But if I ask a question like, how many seagulls out of a random sample taken in Montreal are carrying strains of bird flu. That's something you can find out, and it might even be existing data on it, right? And if I was a public health expert, I would be very interested in knowing that, and I might want to know it every so often. So if you think about questions this way, you're going to start narrowing it down really quickly, and you're not going to be wasting your time on stuff that no one would ever care about. So, but the important thing is to not stay boxed in. Don't just ask sales questions. Don't just ask financial questions, although it's perfectly good idea to start with these, right? Like, if you can't answer how many leads do we contact per month, or what is our deal to close rate, start there. But if you're able to answer these basic questions, then you can start pulling these answers together into higher level answers. So that's the way I really recommend thinking about it, because that's how you're going to make the case internally for better data, better analytics, is by actually connecting it to your company's goals. So I would say the best questions are cross-functional, right? There are definitely questions that matter to sales, and there are questions that matter to finance, but questions that can build bridges across departments, those are the ones that are going to be really powerful. And those are going to generate much more energy and support for building out this kind of capability. So I put a bunch of ideas on there that I thought, just randomly, but your company is going to have its own priorities. And if you start thinking about the unknowns that would really help you grow faster or achieve whatever goal it is that are the prime directives, then you can start working back into the data and figuring out, okay, what do we know now? How certain are we about it? What would be easy for us to add to our knowledge, and what is really hard to know? And you're making progress already if you're able to just think in those terms. So there's with data, you're starting from very basic facts. How many employees do we have? How much money did we make last year? What is, our highest selling product? Those are very basic facts, right? But when you're trying to answer business questions, you want to start from the very top and with your business's core reason for being. So I found a few of these like stated high-level goals from these companies. And, if you think about it that way, if you really start at the top and then start at the bottom with your data, you meet in the middle with some really interesting business questions. Once you have the business questions that you want to answer, and you have the first data sources you want to start with, you can start to make a lot of sense. So I recommend starting with data visualization. If you have a tool you really like, go for it. I use Power BI because it's cheap, and it is, it's right there, and it has a lot of good tools. It has a lot of good tools for people who want to get into the data. It's not just for analysts. You can really do a lot by yourself. So first, with data visualization, when you start to pull in your multiple data sources, you can turn basic metrics into more complicated metrics, right? So I can revenue divided by headcount, revenue per employee. Now, is that the most granular, clever metric? No, but it's more information than you had 2 minutes ago. And just multiply that by all these other higher level metrics you can start to make, and then you're starting to build a structure. You're starting to it's sort of like the higher level functions of the brain, right? You've got your lizard brain, and then you've got your mammal brain, and then you've got your ape brain, and they all are built on top of each other. You start with the simple, and then you build up to the complexity. So as you go, too, you can see gigantic outliers. You'll say, what the heck is this? Why is this? And then you'll start to see flaws in your data, right? I was talking with somebody yesterday who said that he pulled a report and he noticed that there was a giant 3.5 million of revenue that was unsorted, basically. And he went and he dug through it and he realized, oh, this entire customer has been mislabeled. The revenue wasn't attributed. Great, let's go in and fix that. So the more you use your data, the more you're going to find those problems and those outliers. You have to be critical of your data as you go. You should crinkle your forehead and go find out when you see things that don't make sense. And then as you go, you're cleaning this data. It's getting better. And then you're not going to end up with AI telling you to glue your cheese to your pizza, right? So that's kind of the maturity curve, right? You use Power BI, get reports out there, put them in people's hands, help them do their jobs better. And then you look at, okay, we've got demand here. Let's unify the data and make this super easy. Let's make it perform and let's build as many models as we can, right? And then, boom, you're already 2/3 of the way there to the AI dream. So building a semantic model, this is a little bit more of a technical step. But it is worth talking a little bit about, even if you are into data, if you're tech savvy, this is something you can do. Or it may be something that you want to involve a data architect or an expert partner who can help you. So you let your questions guide you. So, what am I trying to figure out? Here are the data elements that I need to figure that out. And then you have to make relationships between these tables, right? Is it one to many? Is it many to many? Is it many to one, et cetera, et cetera? And once you wrap your head around relationships, you start to understand, okay, so to link these two tables, what do they have in common? So sales orders and customers may have a customer identifying number on it. So that kind of thing. So essentially, as you take your data, put it into a semantic model, then you've built a new data model that are where the meaning of how these things relate to each other is something that anybody can now use. It's not just one report that you're putting out there. You're putting out a whole data model that people can start to ask their own questions of and get creative with. So that's the coolest part to me, is once you have this model that pulls in different data sources, other people are going to find things in it that you didn't find, and you'll very quickly have a community of super users harassing you for more. And I always think that's a good thing. So because more demand means a stronger business case. If you've got people coming to you wanting answers about this, that, and the other, then all of a sudden you can go to your management and say, this is bigger than just me answering a few questions. This is part of people's workflow now. And I just wanted to come back to this for 1 second, because now we're definitely getting into a situation where we want to get to number 2. Because if you've got one semantic model, that's one thing. If you've got multiple data models that you're doing to report on different parts of the business, different questions, different areas of interest, then you want to centralize your data in something like OneLake, where you have the security model at the very basis of what you're doing, and you can cascade that security model down to every semantic model and every report, every user, and it's all in there, and nobody is passing around Excel documents and workbooks with old data or data they shouldn't have, unsecured data, all that stuff, right? This one I will leave with you, but as you start hitting limits, you will discover your business drivers, right? So as you start to analyze, you might realize, geez, we know how much marketing costs, but we have no idea how it's performing. That's a really common one, I will tell you. I don't think I've been at a company that is confident in what works with marketing. So once you have that blind spot, you're going to get a lot of demand, probably partly from the marketing team, to start reporting on marketing. And then you can go back to them. You can go back to marketing and say, here's what I need from you. I need you to do this. I need you to do this, 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 and this, and change the way you collect this data. And then as you're collecting the data better, then you're reporting better, and then it gets better and better over time. So same thing with these other potential questions. As you hit limits, you will be able to exceed them. You got to make the data an indispensable tool. Everybody's going to want it. And make sure there are frontline use cases. It's not just for managers. It's not just for analysts. It's for everybody wants to be able to perform better. And if data can help them do that, give it to everybody. So I'm running out of time here. There's a little bit more information. The rest of this is just a little bit of information about Fabric and Power BI. I'm not going to bore you too much with that, but I will say, essentially, the difference with Fabric and Power BI is that together they give you every single thing you need to deliver the analytics and data use case, and then layer on AI. So if you can take those data sources, put them all into one place, and you have all the layers of a BI project at that point. And so these are some of the concerns that you might have as you start to build the business case for a better BI function. Since I'm started running out of time, I won't go so deep into the business case. I'm just going to have you think about this. If you were going back to some of these big company goals, and then you break it down into small questions, and then you start to look at where in our data can we start to chisel away at these unknowns and start to know. This is going top down. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. And my time is up anyway. I think we should, I would love to make these slides available to you because I do think there are some good tips and tricks in here about how to make your business case internally. I do think that if I'm going to leave you with one thing, it's that analytics and data are not just a tool for nerds like me, and it's not just a tool for executives to see how everybody's performing. Everybody can benefit from data to be more productive. And I think we should think about it the same way we do with Copilot. The more you know, the stronger you are, and the more you'll be able to achieve. So that's I'm going to leave it right there for now, and I will stay behind for questions if anybody wants to chat. So thank you very much.